Hi everyone, is Patrick here. I'm recording my third message already on the Faith series. 2 days ago I started with the F, which stands for focus. They're all related to faith, how important it is to have faith. We hear everybody saying, have faith, don't panic, don't be afraid. And I'm trying to make it a bit more tangible, how that could look like in our daily lives. And obviously, these times are extremely challenging for, I think, all of us, it's safe to say. So, the F, first of all, I said it 2 days ago, it stands for focus. What do you allow your eyes to see? What is the perspective that you're having from the world around you? What do you believe to be ultimately true and important? That's very important. People, obviously, they can focus on all the bad stuff and all the bad news that's out there, and that will eventually start to stir a lot of fear and anxiety in their hearts. And then yesterday I spoke about abide. Abide is probably a word we don't use a lot in English, but if we think of words like to endure, to rest in some ways, to dwell in the presence, and obviously I put it in the context of dwelling in the presence of God, that is extremely important. All right, so we have the F, we have the A. We go to the third letter, and that's obviously the I. And probably you will think this time that the word that I'm using is a bit odd if you compare it to faith. But the I stands for invest. The I stands for invest. Well, let's talk about investments. The last couple of weeks we have seen all around the world stock exchange markets plummet like crazy. They've been going down. The Dow Jones in the United States, also here in Australia, in Europe, in many other nations. People that are having shares, they have their portfolios, they see a lot of money just disappearing just like that because people are seeing what's going on in the markets. And we all know that investments, they involve risk in some way. And risk is probably another good word of faith. So invest and faith, they are very much connected with one another. Jesus had a lot to say about how to invest wisely. And today I would like to share a few words that are based on probably the most famous sermon ever preached, which is the sermon that Jesus preached on the Mount. And he says this in Matthew chapter 6, verses 19 to 21. He says the following about investment. Do not lay up for yourselves treasures on earth, where moth and rust destroy, and where thieves break in and steal. But lay up for yourselves treasures in heaven, where neither moth nor rust destroys, and where thieves do not break in and steal. For where your treasure is, there your heart will be also. I already said, like where we focus our eyes upon, our heart starts to follow that. And for investment, it's pretty much the same. We invest in something because we believe that to be important. And of course, in the natural realm, we invest our money in certain things because we believe that they will be profitable in some ways. But here's the thing with investment. It's not any investment that will stand the test of time. There will be investments that ultimately are not gonna be that important at all. As a matter of fact, Jesus was already saying, do not just lay up stuff here on earth, whether it's material or stuff, that you're not gonna take for all eternity with you. So basically, and maybe a very simple way of illustrating this in a metaphor. Let's suppose I have two dogs here on either of my shoulders. And let's call dog number one eternity. It's not a common name for a dog, of course, but it's something you can relate to. And on the other part of my shoulder, I have another dog called temporary. Again, not a name you would call your dog, I suppose. Like temporary, come, let's have some food. You wouldn't call your dog like that, but just for the sake of the argument. Now, in our daily lives, in our daily walks, we need to feed our dogs. Some of you have pets, we all understand that. We need to feed our dogs. But in the context of eternity and temporary, it's very important to understand which of these two dogs am I feeding more. You see, people We all make investment of our time, of our money, of our efforts, of our affection, of our energy, of so many other things. And some of those things, obviously, we live in a temporal world where we do need to invest time in temporary things. That's part of being human. But we also have an understanding that this life is not the only life we have. As a matter of fact, on this side of eternity, for those of us that have Jesus as their Lord and Savior, we also understand that it's important to invest in eternity. And Jesus made it very clear what those investments in eternity should look like. For instance, in the very beginning of his sermon, he said something like, "Blessed are the peacemakers. Blessed are those that are seeking God, that are humble in spirit, and that are loving other people selflessly." You know, those are investments that will stand the test of time. Many people, they are wondering where they can invest their money and their efforts in. As a matter of fact, they are now at home wondering, what am I going to do with my time? I don't know what to do. Yesterday I already spoke a bit about the busyness of life, and when the busyness all of a sudden starts to disappear, people start to reconnect with what's going on from the inside, and for many people that's a very uncomfortable thought. Because in the midst of the non-busyness right now, there are many voices still screaming and asking for their attention. God is calling us to invest in the things that matters most. And he said it in something very interesting as well, in a short story, a very short story that Jesus also shared with his disciples. And he said this about the kingdom of God, which was his most important message. He said that he said it like this: "Again, the kingdom of heaven is like a merchant seeking beautiful pearls, who, when he had found one pearl of great price, went and sold all that he had and bought it." You see, for those that see that the investment in the eternal things matter the most, they will put their share, they will put their money, so to speak, figuratively speaking, in that, because they understand that it will stand the test of time. Now, the most important message that Jesus ever preached was the kingdom of God, was about the fact that this reality that we see is something where God is going to establish his rule. COVID-19 doesn't have the last word at all in this whole situation. As a matter of fact, he is, I think, even using it. He's not sending it, but he's using the entire situation to wake people up, to show, listen, spend your time wisely. Many people are now perhaps picking up on a hobby, perhaps learning a language from home, learning a new skill, and they're all valuable, they're all important. But ultimately, we need to ask ourselves, what am I really investing my time in? For me personally, this comes very close to home. For some of you might know, others might not. We lived in many parts of the world. We lived in Europe, we lived in Brazil for many years, and now we're living in Australia. And we live far away from family. And right now we're not, and like many of you also have perhaps family members that live overseas somewhere. And particularly when it is in times like this, when you're not even able to physically see them anymore, you are reminded of, you know, how fragile life is, how difficult sometimes life can be. And many people, particularly in Holland, they ask me, "Patrick, why are you doing this? Why are you going? Being a pastor is very tough. That's not just a job. It's something much more than a job. Why are you doing it? Why are you investing all your time, your effort, your energy in pastoring a church?" And my answer is simply this. It's because God called me to do this. This is a calling. For many of you that are pastors or leaders, you know exactly what I'm talking about. This is something that comes from the inside out. It's something that God has put in the inside. For those of you that are ministering to people, whether on your job, if you're still working, if you're not working from home, you understand that investing your time, your energy, your focus, your attention into these people matters the most. And that's simply the question that I want to leave for you today. Many of you are perhaps wondering, what am I going to do with all this time? Well, God is calling us to invest our time, our efforts, and even our finance, if we can, into the things that matter the most. It means that we look after each other. Right now, the most important asset is to have networks of people, of friends, of those that we love, and that we stay connected one way or another. I'm right now doing it through Facebook Live. You might have other ways of connecting with other people. People want to be seen, and people want to be heard. And I think it's especially in these times, I believe that the church is going to thrive. Is going to thrive. It's going to be a special time. As a matter of fact, I believe that after this whole pandemic is over, it's not just for church, it's for many other situations as well. The world will not look the same afterwards. And for some people, that's a scary thought. They're afraid of the unknown, what it might bring. Some of you might even have lost their jobs already, and they're in a very tough space. I'm simply telling you, invest your time that you have right now in eternity. Spend time with Him. Pray. Perhaps you have been time where you haven't had this close relationship with Him. That is ultimately what matters the most. Many people obviously want to be with the Lord. They want to go to heaven. But then it also means to start investing the precious time that you have today here. I think there are many things happening here in Australia, as we hear the reports also in the United States and many other places. This is not a time for the church, for Christians to despair. I believe that God is shaking. He's simply using it, and He's using it for the better. So invest your time wisely, stay safe, do your part, and God bless you. Thank you.